It was a bright, sunny morning in Willow Creek, a tiny town where everybody knew everybody else. The birds were chirping, the sky was blue, and Jake Harper was sitting on his front porch holding a warm cup of coffee. He took a sip and smiled, looking out at his big, green field. That field wasn't just any field, it was his treasure. Jake had worked hard and saved every single penny to buy it. He dreamed of turning it into a farm one day with clucking chickens, rows of yummy vegetables, and maybe even a little house where he could raise a family. To Jake, that land wasn't just dirt and grass. It was his future, his big plan, his heart. Jake loved sitting on his porch, imagining what his farm would look like. He could almost see the red barn, the shiny tractor, and the flowers blooming all around. Every time he looked at his field, he felt proud. It was his, fair and square, he'd earned it. But not everyone in Willow Creek thought Jake's field was special. Some people thought it was boring, just a big empty space with nothing on it. And the worst of those people, the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. The HOA was like a group of grown-up bosses who made rules for the whole town. They told people how to cut their grass, what color their houses could be, and even what kind of flowers they could plant. If you didn't follow their rules, they'd send you a mean letter or make you pay a fine. The HOA thought they were in charge of everything, and they loved telling people what to do. The leader of the HOA was a woman named Karen Walsh. Karen was the bossiest person in Willow Creek. She had a loud voice that could make you jump, and her eyes were so sharp they could cut through anything. Karen always carried a clipboard, writing down notes about who was breaking her rules. She'd walk around town with her nose in the air, acting like she was the queen of everything. If your mailbox was the wrong shade of blue, Karen would know. If your dog barked too loud, Karen would write it down. And if she didn't like something, she'd let you know fast. Karen did not like Jake's field. She'd walk by it with her clipboard, shaking her head and making a face like she smelled something bad. "This field is ugly," she'd say, loud enough for Jake to hear. "It's just sitting there doing nothing. It makes our town look messy." She'd wrinkle her nose and mutter about how Willow Creek deserved better. To Karen, Jake's field was a problem and she wanted to fix it. She didn't care that it belonged to Jake. She didn't care about his dreams. All she cared about was making the town look perfect her way. Jake heard Karen's complaints all the time. She'd say them at town meetings, to neighbors, or even right to his face. "Jake, why don't you do something with that land?" she asked, her voice all fake and sweet. "It's such a waste." Jake would just smile and nod, staying quiet. He didn't like fighting or arguing. He was a calm guy, the kind who worked hard and kept to himself. Most people in Willow Creek didn't pay much attention to him. They saw him mowing his lawn or buying groceries, and they thought, "Oh, that's just Jake. He's nice, but he's nothing special." They didn't know about his big plans for the farm. They didn't know how much that field meant to him. To the town, Jake was just a regular guy. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't go to fancy parties or make big speeches. He wore plain clothes, jeans, and a t-shirt, and his truck was old and a little rusty. People like Karen looked at him and thought he was nobody important. They thought he was weak, someone they could push around. Even the neighbors who liked Jake didn't think he'd ever stand up to someone like Karen. "Jake, too quiet," they'd say. "He just goes along with things." But here's the thing, Jake wasn't as ordinary as everyone thought. Deep inside, he had a spark, a fire that burned bright when something wasn't fair. He might be quiet, but he's zero characters. "Let me know if you need adjustments or a specific word count." He was stubborn as a mule. When it came to his field, Jake had a line you didn't cross. That land was his, and no one was going to take it away. Karen and the HOA thought they could boss him around because he was quiet. They thought he'd just shrug and let them do whatever they wanted. Oh boy, were they wrong. Jake's quiet side made people underestimate him, but that was their mistake. He wasn't weak. He was strong, like a tree with deep roots that wouldn't budge no matter how hard the wind blew. Karen and her HOA crew were about to learn that messing with Jake Harper was a bad idea. They thought they could walk all over him, but Jake was ready to fight for what was his. And when Jake fought, he fought smart. So what do you think? Would you let someone like Karen tell you what to do with your stuff? Imagine someone trying to take your favorite game or your special spot at school. Would you stay quiet, or would you stand up and say, "No way, Jake's story is just getting started and it's going to get super exciting"? Stick around because you won't believe what happens next. Hey, don't go anywhere. Drop a comment and tell me what's something you'd fight for no matter what. And if you're loving this story, smash that subscribe button so we can keep the fun going. Let's see what Jake does next. It was a sunny Monday morning in Willow Creek, and Jake Harper was sound asleep in his cozy bed. Suddenly, a loud rumbling noise shook him awake. It sounded like a giant monster was stomping outside. Jake rubbed his eyes, jumped out of bed, and ran to the window. What he saw made his heart stop. Big, noisy bulldozers were tearing up his field. Workers were busy unloading shiny swings, a bright red slide, and a big sandbox, plopping them right on Jake's land like they owned it. Jake's eyes got wide. "No way," he gasped. He threw on his slippers, not even caring that he was still in his striped pajamas, and ran outside as fast as he could. His arms waved in the air like a windmill. "Hey, stop, what's going on?" he yelled, his voice loud and shaky. The workers didn't even look up. They kept digging and hammering, acting like Jake wasn't even there. Jake's stomach twisted. This was his land, his dream, and they were wrecking it. Then out of nowhere, Karen Walsh appeared. She was the bossy leader of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, or HOA, and she walked up with a big, smug smile on her face. She held her clipboard tight like it was a shield. "Oh, Jake, calm down," she said, talking to him like he was a little kid throwing a tantrum. "The HOA had a meeting and we all voted. We decided your land is perfect for a new playground. It's for the kids, you know, don't be so selfish." Jake's face got hot like he'd been standing in the sun too long. Selfish? Selfish? This was his land. He'd worked hard, saved every penny, and bought it with his own money. "This is my property," he shouted, pointing at the field. "You can't just build stuff on it." His voice was loud, but inside he felt like he was shaking. He wasn't used to yelling at people. Karen didn't care. She didn't even blink. Instead, she let out a sharp, mean laugh that made Jake's skin crawl. "Take it up with the HOA, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We're doing this for the town. It's what everyone wants." Then she turned and walked away, her shoes clicking on the ground like she was the boss of everything. Jake stood there, his mouth open, watching her go. The bulldozers kept rumbling and the workers kept building, like Jake's words didn't matter at all. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. His field, his treasure, his dream of a farm with chickens and a garden was being torn apart. And Karen acted like he was nothing, like his land was just a big empty space for her to use. The workers didn't look at him. They just followed Karen's orders, hammering and digging without a care. Jake saw neighbors driving by in their cars, slowing down to stare at the playground going up. Some even smiled, like they thought it was a great idea. But no one stopped to ask Jake if he was okay. No one said, "Hey, is this your land?" They just kept going, leaving Jake alone in his pajamas, feeling smaller than ever. Karen's words kept ringing in his head. "Don't be selfish." Selfish? Jake wasn't selfish. He bought that land fair and square. He'd worked long hours, saved every dime, and dreamed of his farm for years. This wasn't about being selfish, it was about what was right. But Karen and the HOA were treating him like he was the bad guy, like he was wrong for wanting to keep what was his. It wasn't fair, and Jake's heart pounded with anger. He trudged back to his house, his slippers dragging in the dirt. Inside, he paced back and forth in the kitchen, his hands clenched into fists. "This isn't right," he muttered to himself. "They can't do this." His field wasn't just a piece of land, it was his future, his hope. He'd pictured his kids playing there one day, chasing chickens and picking tomatoes. Karen didn't care about that. She didn't care about him. She thought she could bully him because he was quiet, because he didn't make a fuss. Well, she was about to find out that Jake wasn't going to roll over and give up. Jake stopped packing and grabbed his phone. His hands were shaky, but he was determined. He dialed 911 and took a deep breath. "I need help," he told the operator, his voice still wobbly but strong. "People are trespassing on my property and they're building things without my permission." The operator listened and said a police officer would come soon to check things out. Jake thanked her and hung up, his heart racing. Calling the police was a big step. He wasn't the kind of guy who made trouble, but this was different. This was his land, and he wasn't going to let Karen steal it. As he put the phone down, Jake walked to the window and looked out at the bulldozers. They were still there, tearing up his grass, ruining his dream. Karen was probably laughing, thinking she'd won, but Jake's eyes narrowed. "You want to fight, Karen?" he whispered, his voice low and steady. "You're gonna get one." Deep inside, Jake felt that spark of strength he'd always had, the stubborn part of him that wouldn't quit. Karen and the HOA thought they could push him around because he was quiet. They thought he was weak. But Jake wasn't weak. He was ready to stand up for what was his, and he wasn't going to back down. What would you do if someone started messing with your stuff? Would you call for help like Jake, or would you march right up and tell them to stop? This story's getting intense, so stick around to see what Jake does next. Drop a comment and tell me what's something you'd fight for, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic stories. The days after the bulldozers showed up were like a bad dream for Jake Harper. Every morning he'd wake up hoping it was all a mistake, but it was. The playground on his field kept growing bigger and bigger. Workers put up shiny swings that squeaked in the wind. They bolted down a bright red slide that glinted in the sun. And right in the middle of Jake's land, they plopped a huge sandbox filled with soft, yellow sand. It looked like a real park, but it was all wrong. This was Jake's field, his dream for a farm, and now it was turning into something else, something he didn't want. Willow Creek Homeowners Association, or HOA, acted like they'd already won. They didn't care that the land belonged to Jake. They even put up a big sign that said Willow Creek Community Park in bold, fancy letters. One afternoon, they threw a party right there on Jake's field. There were balloons in every color, cupcakes with sprinkles, and music playing from a little speaker. Neighbors came with their kids, clapping and taking pictures. They smiled and laughed, thinking the playground was a great idea. But none of them knew the truth. This wasn't the HOA's land. It was Jake, and he never said they could use it. Jake stood on his porch, watching the party from far away. His hands were curled into tight fists, and his face felt hot with anger. "They think they can just take it," he muttered to himself. "They're gonna regret this." Karen Walsh, the bossy HOA leader, was strutting around the playground like she was a movie star. She wore her usual fake smile, shaking hands with neighbors and saying, "Oh, the HOA worked so hard to make this happen. We're so generous." She didn't say one word about Jake. It was like he didn't even exist. To Karen, Jake was just a quiet guy who didn't matter, but she was wrong. Jake wasn't just going to sit there and let this happen. He went inside his house, his heart beating fast. He opened his desk drawer and dug through piles of papers until he found it, the deed to his land. It was a special paper that proved every inch of that field belonged to him. Jake held it tight, reading the words that said property of Jake Harper. This was his proof, his shield. No one could argue with this. Next, Jake grabbed his phone and called his friend Sarah. Sarah was a lawyer, which meant she knew all about laws and rules. When Jake told her what the HOA was doing, her voice got sharp. "Jake, this is nuts," she said. "They can't build a playground on your land without asking you. That's against the law. Let me look into this and see what's going on." Sarah's words were like a warm hug. They gave Jake hope. Maybe he could fight this. Maybe he could save his field. But even with Sarah's help, Jake still felt mad. Every time he looked out his window and saw that playground, it hurt like a knife in his chest. The swings, the slide, the sandbox, they were stealing his dream of a farm, and Karen wasn't done making things worse. One day, she came to Jake's house and knocked on his door. When he opened it, there she was with her clipboard and that fake sugary smile. "Jake, let's be reasonable," she said, like she was talking to a little kid. "Why don't you just agree to the playground? It's good for the town, and honestly, you're not even using that land." Jake stared at her, his jaw tight. He wanted to yell, but he kept his voice low and strong. "It's mine," he said, "and you're gonna take that playground down." Karen's smile didn't budge, but her eyes got cold. She rolled them and said, "Good luck with that, Jake." Then she turned and walked away, her shoes clicking like she owned the world. Jake shut the door, his heart pounding. Karen thought he was weak, but he was ready to fight. Jake started paying attention to everything. He watched the playground from his porch, noticing every little detail. One day he saw Karen whispering with a man named Mike. Mike was the contractor who was building the playground. He wore a hard hat and always looked nervous. Jake got closer and heard Mike say something weird. "We're cutting corners to keep costs low." Cutting corners, that didn't sound good. Jake's stomach twisted. Was the playground safe? Were Karen and Mike hiding something? He didn't know yet, but he was going to find out. Jake also started talking to his neighbors. Most of them didn't even know the playground was on his land. One day, he showed his deed to Mrs. Carter, an older lady who lived down the street. Her eyes got big. "Wait, this field is yours?" she asked, holding the paper. "Jake, that's not right. The HOA can't do this. You need to fight this." Jake nodded, feeling a little stronger. "Oh, I will," he said. Another neighbor, Mr. Lopez, looked surprised too. "I thought the HOA owned that land," he said. "They never told us it was yours." Jake explained how Karen and the HOA were building without his permission. Mr. Lopez shook his head. "That's wrong, Jake. You've got to stand up to them." Hearing his neighbors say this made Jake feel less alone. Maybe he wasn't the only one who thought Karen was being unfair. Every day, Jake kept watching and listening. He noticed Mike bringing in cheap-looking materials for the playground, thin metal for the swings and wobbly bolts for the slide. Jake didn't know much about building, but it didn't look safe. He wrote down everything he saw in a little notebook, just in case. He also kept calling Sarah, who was digging into the HOA's papers. "I'm finding some shady stuff," Sarah told him one day. "Just hang in there, Jake." Jake's anger was still there, but now he had a plan. He wasn't just going to yell or give up. He was going to be smart. He was going to gather proof and show the town what Karen was really doing. Karen thought she could bully him because he was quiet, but Jake was like a detective now, piecing things together. The playground wasn't just a problem, it was a clue. Something big was coming, and Jake was ready to find it. What do you think Jake's gonna do next? Is Karen hiding something sneaky with Mike? Drop a comment and tell me what you think is going on, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see how the story explodes. 1 week after Jake started fighting back, everything changed. It was a regular morning when Jake's phone rang. He picked it up, and it was Sarah, his lawyer friend. Her voice was excited, like she just found a hidden treasure. "Jake, you're not gonna believe this," she said. "I looked at the HOA's papers, and they never got permission to build that playground on your land. They made fake papers to trick everyone into thinking you said it was okay." Jake's mouth fell open. Fake papers, that was a big deal, a crime. His heart started racing. "There's more," Sarah said, her voice getting serious. "That contractor, Mike, used cheap, junky stuff to build the playground. It's not safe at all. The swings or slide could break and kids could get hurt. Jake, we've got them." Jake felt like he was in a movie. This was huge. Karen and the HOA thought they could bully him, but now he had proof they were doing bad things. He knew it was time to act. He called the police again, his hands shaking with excitement. "I need an officer at my field," he told them. "The HOA is breaking the law." Then he called Sarah and asked her to meet him at the playground. It was time to show everyone the truth. It was a sunny afternoon, perfect for playing outside. The playground on Jake's field was busy. Kids were swinging, sliding, and laughing in the sandbox. Karen Walsh, the bossy HOA leader, was there too, showing off to a group of parents. She wore a big smile, acting like she was the best person in town. "Look at this amazing playground," she said, waving her hand at the swings. "The HOA did this for all of you." The parents nodded and clapped, thinking Karen was a hero. But they didn't know the real story, not yet. Jake and Sarah arrived at the playground, and right behind them was Officer Daniels. He was a tall police officer with a serious face, the kind of person who didn't mess around. Karen saw them coming, and her smile disappeared. She clutched her clipboard tight like it could protect her. "What's this about?" she snapped, her voice sharp and annoyed. Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward. He held up his deed, the special paper that proved the field was his. He raised it high so everyone could see. "This is my land," he said, his voice loud and strong. The whole crowd turned to look. "You built this playground without my permission, and you used fake papers to do it." The parents gasped, kids stopped playing and stared. The air felt heavy like a storm was coming. Corinne's face turned as white as a sheet. "That's nonsense," she sputtered, her voice shaking. "Jake, you're making this up, you're just jealous." But nobody was clapping for her now. The parents looked confused, whispering to each other. "Is that true?" one dad asked. "Did she really do that?" Officer Daniels stepped up, taking the deed from Jake. He read it carefully, his eyes scanning every word. Then he looked at Corinne, his face hard. "This paper says the land belongs to Mr. Harper," he said. "And we've got reports of fake papers. That's a crime. We're shutting this playground down until we figure this out." The crowd got louder, everyone talking at once. Corinne's eyes darted around like she was looking for a way to escape. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "The HOA did nothing wrong," but her voice sounded weak now, like she knew she was in trouble. Then Sarah stepped forward and she dropped the biggest surprise of all. "That's not all," she said, looking at the parents. "This playground isn't safe. The contractor, Mike, used cheap materials that aren't strong enough. The swings could break, the slide could fall, your kids could get hurt." She held up a folder full of papers, proof of everything she was saying. The parents gasped again, louder this time. One mom grabbed her little boy's hand and pulled him away from the swings. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice scared. Sarah nodded. "We have proof," she said, holding up the folder. "The HOA and Mike knew the playground wasn't safe, but they built it anyway." The crowd was buzzing now. Parents hugged their kids, looking at the playground like it was a monster. One dad shouted, "How could you do this?" Another mom shook her head, saying, "I trusted the HOA." Corinne tried to talk, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "It's not true," she said. "You're all overreacting." But nobody believed her anymore. Officer Daniels crossed his arms and looked at Corinne. "Save it for court," he said, his voice like a brick wall. "We're taking this seriously." Corinne's face crumpled. Her clipboard slipped from her hands and fell to the ground. The parents stared at her, their eyes full of shock and anger. For the first time, Corinne didn't look like the boss. She looked small, like someone who'd been caught doing something very wrong. Jake stood tall, his heart pounding but strong. He'd been quiet for so long, letting Corinne and the HOA push him around. But not anymore. He'd shown everyone the truth. His deed, Sarah's proof, and the police were on his side. The playground wasn't a happy place anymore. It was proof that Corinne had lied and cheated. Jake wasn't just the quiet guy now. He was the guy who fought back and won. The crowd was quiet, watching Jake. Some parents nodded at him like they were saying, "Good job." Others looked at Corinne, shaking their heads. Her perfect image was falling apart like a sandcastle washed away by the waves. Jake felt a rush of pride. He'd done it. He stood up for his land, his dream, and now everyone knew the truth. What do you think happens to Corinne now? Will Jake's land be safe? Drop a comment and tell me what you think. And don't forget to like and subscribe to find out how this story ends. The weeks after Jake's big stand at the playground were like a whirlwind. Everything changed in Willow Creek, and it felt like the town took a deep breath after all the drama. The playground on Jake's field, it was gone, completely gone. Workers came with big trucks and tore it down piece by piece. The shiny swings were taken away. The bright red slide was hauled off. Even the sandbox with its soft yellow sand was scooped up and carried away. By the end, Jake's field was just a field again, green, quiet, and all his. He stood on his porch looking out at it and smiled. His land was back just the way he wanted it. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association, or HOA, got in big trouble. The police in the town found out they'd done some really bad things, like trespassing on Jake's land and using fake papers to make it look okay. The HOA had to pay a huge fine, so much money it made everyone gasp. It was like getting a giant timeout for being naughty. And Corinne Walsh, the bossy HOA leader, she was kicked out. Nobody wanted her to be president anymore. People in town stopped trusting her. When she walked down the street, folks turned away or whispered. Her big, fake smile didn't work anymore. Corinne wasn't the boss of anything now. Mike, the sneaky contractor who built the playground, got in trouble too. The police found out he used cheap, junky materials that weren't safe. The swings could have broken and kids could have gotten hurt. Mike had been cutting corners to save money, and guess what? Hare knew about it. They thought they could trick everyone, but Jake's stubborn fight showed the truth. Mike had to face charges, which means he might have to go to court or pay a fine. He wasn't smiling anymore, that's for sure. The neighbors who had clapped and cheered for the playground felt super bad when they learned it was Jake's land. They didn't know the HOA was lying. One by one, they started coming to Jake's house to say sorry. Mrs. Carter, an older lady with a kind face, knocked on his door. "Jake, we had no idea it was your land," she said. "You did the right thing standing up to them." Jake nodded and smiled. "Thanks," he said, feeling a little better. Another neighbor, Mr. Lopez, brought a plate of chocolate chip cookies. "We're sorry, Jake," he said. "Let us know if we can help fix your field." Some kids even offered to rake up the messy dirt left by the playground. Jake thanked them all, but he didn't need a big fuss. He just wanted his land back, and now he had it. Jake went back to his quiet life the way he liked it. At night, he'd sit at his kitchen table with a pencil and paper sketching ideas for his dream farm. He drew a big red barn, rows of green vegetables, and a bunch of fluffy chickens clucking around. Sometimes he'd close his eyes and picture it, crops growing tall, flowers blooming, and maybe even a little house where he could start a family someday. His field wasn't just dirt, it was his future, and nobody was going to take it away again. The people in Willow Creek learned a big lesson: don't mess with Jake Harper. He used to be the quiet guy, the one nobody noticed. But now he was the guy who took on the HOA and won. Neighbors waved when they saw him driving his old, rusty truck. Kids smiled when he walked by. Even the grumpy old man at the grocery store gave him a nod like he was saying, "Good job, kid." Jake didn't need all the attention, but it felt nice to know the town saw him differently now. He wasn't invisible anymore. Jake's field started to heal. The grass grew back, covering the spots where the playground had been. He walked out there sometimes, feeling the soft ground under his boots. It was his again, and that made his heart full. He knew it would take time to build his farm, but he was patient. Jake was good at waiting for the right moment, just like he'd waited to show Karen and the HOA they couldn't push him around. The town felt different too. People talked about what happened, telling the story of Jake in the playground like it was a legend. Parents told their kids, if something's yours, stand up for it like Jake did. The HOA got quieter, making fewer rules and being more careful. Nobody wanted to get in trouble like Karen and Mike did. Willow Creek was still a small town, but it felt a little fairer, a little kinder, because Jake showed everyone what was right. Jake didn't brag or show off. He didn't need to. He had his land, his dreams, and his strength. That was enough. He fought for what was his and won, and that feeling, it was better than any prize. As he looked out at his field, Jake knew one thing for sure: nobody would ever try to take it again. What do you think about Jake's big win? Would you cheer for him? Drop a comment and tell me what you'd do if someone tried to take your stuff. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that make you feel awesome. So what's the big lesson we learned from Jake Harper's wild adventure in Willow Creek? Let's think about it. Jake was just a regular guy, the kind of person you might walk past without noticing. He was quiet, kept to himself, and didn't make a big fuss. People like Karen, the bossy HOA leader, thought he was weak. They thought they could push him around, take his land, and build a playground without even asking. But Jake showed everyone they were wrong, super wrong. Sometimes the quietest person is the one with the most strength inside, like a superhero hiding in plain clothes. Jake didn't need to yell or act tough to win. He didn't need to show off or make everyone look at him. Instead, he used his smarts and his heart. He found his deed, called his friend Sarah, and worked with the police to show the truth. He stood up for what was his land, his dream of a farm, and he didn't let anyone scare him away. That's what makes Jake so special. He was brave in his own way, and that bravery changed everything. Think about Karen for a second. She was loud, bossy, and acted like she was in charge of the whole town. She thought she could bully Jake because he didn't talk much. But people like Karen, who think they can push others around, always end up losing in the end. Why? Because being mean and sneaky doesn't make you strong, it makes you weak. Karen lost her job as HOA president, her friends stopped trusting her, and the whole town saw her for who she really was. Jake, on the other hand, got his land back and earned everyone's respect. That's what happens when you do what's right. This story isn't just about Jake and his field, it's about all of us. Every single one of us has something we care about. Maybe it's a favorite toy, a special place, or a dream we hold tight in our hearts. And sometimes people might try to take that away or tell us it's not important. They might laugh or say we're not strong enough to fight back. But Jake's story shows us that we are strong, even if we don't feel like it at first. You don't have to be the loudest or the toughest to stand up for what's yours. You just have to believe in yourself and keep going, no matter what. What if Jake had given up? What if he listened to Karen when she said, just agree to the playground? His field would be gone and his dream of a farm would be lost, but he didn't give up. He kept fighting even when it was hard. That's a big lesson for all of us. When something matters to you, don't let anyone take it away. Fight for it even if you're scared, even if you're quiet, even if everyone else thinks you can't win. Because you can win just like Jake did. This story also makes us think about fairness. Jake's land was his, fair and square. He worked hard and saved his money to buy it. Karen and the HOA weren't being fair when they tried to take it. They lied, used fake papers, and built an unsafe playground. That wasn't right, and Jake showed everyone what fairness looks like. He didn't just fight for himself, he fought for what's right for the whole town. Now, Willow Creek is a little fairer because of him. Kids can play safely, and the HOA knows they can't bully people anymore. Jake made his town better, and that's something to cheer about. Let's take a moment to imagine you in Jake's shoes. What's something you'd fight for? Maybe it's your favorite spot on the playground where you love to swing or read. Maybe it's a picture you drew that someone tried to take. Or maybe it's a dream like becoming a soccer player or a singer. Whatever it is, hold it tight. Don't let anyone tell you it's not worth fighting for. You're stronger than you know, just like Jake. And when you stand up for what's yours, you might inspire other people to be brave too. Jake's story shows us that heroes don't always wear capes or have big muscles. Sometimes they're just regular people who decide to do what's right. Jake didn't need to be loud or famous to win. He just needed to believe in himself and keep going. And guess what? You can do that too. The next time someone tries to take something that's yours or tell you you're not good enough, remember Jake. Be brave, be smart, and don't give up. You've got the strength inside you, even if it's hiding right now. As we say goodbye to this story, let's think about one last thing: the power of standing up. Jake stood up for his land and it changed his life. He got his field back, started planting his farm, and showed the town what he's made of. But more than that, he showed us that anyone can be a hero. You don't need to be the biggest or the loudest. You just need a heart that says, "This is mine and I'm not letting it go." So go out there and be like Jake. Fight for what matters to you and don't let the Karens of the world stop you. Thanks for watching this super exciting story. It was a wild ride, wasn't it? Now it's your turn. What would you do if someone tried to take something that's yours? Would you be brave like Jake? Drop it in the comments and let me know if you want more stories like this. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures that make you feel strong and ready to take on the world. See you next time, you awesome hero.